minus 10, 9, 8, 7.
Wow, look at that. Life's bloody amazing, isn't it? We can live it, be part of it, enjoy it, and be part of this society being taken care of without actually contributing much to it. We have that option. Yet every now and then, us humans face obstacles. Something happens where we have to step out of that zone, which we just heard of, and do something to climb those obstacles, to jump over those hurdles. They force us to change ourselves or to change society. Here, something's changing. I believe that these change makers are no longer, the industry or the researchers, but actually normal people like you and I. And I have some proof of it. My hurdle, my obstacle, is life with diabetes. And sometimes, as diabetic, you share these stories about how it started for us. Our DX, our diagnosis stories. Mine goes a little something like this. I was out in the Stockholm archipelago with my grandfather. This was in 1984. I was 4.5. And he'd brought beer for himself, water for us, and juice for me. Now, after 10 minutes, I'd finished the juice, and after 15 minutes, I'd finished the water. And as I came up to him and asked for beer at the age of 4.5, he knew that something was off. Now, lucky enough, this old man was an old doctor. So he thought back to med school and realized that, oh yeah, wait a minute. Type 1 diabetes, symptoms, extreme thirst. All right. A few days later, I had my diagnosis, lo and behold. Now, I love stories. And one of my favorite stories is Star Wars. Yeah. Who has not seen Star Wars in here? All right, gotcha. If I'd asked, the opposite. If I asked who watched it, no one would show. Okay, anyway. So, in Star Wars, you've seen that Luke and Anakin both had this option to go back, where Obi-Wan asks Anakin, hey, do you want to come with us? And he goes, yeah, let's go. They had the option, though, to turn back. Well, type 1 diabetes doesn't care. There's no choice. It grabs you, it has you, and it will not let go. It is chronic. Now, medically, what happens is this. My immune system attacked my body. For some reason, it turned into the Death Star and totally attacked my beta cells, placed right around here in my pancreas. Now, these beta cells, they used to produce insulin. Well, since they are no more, well, I have no insulin anymore. And insulin is a very vital hormone when it comes to handling sugar. The sugar, which we get from our food, and which enters our bloodstream, needs to be accepted by cells. Cells then do a little magic, and you have energy. Well, insulin kind of opens the door to the cell. And if there is none, the blood glucose starts rising. And what happens then is that the blood turns acidic. We call that the diabetic ketoacidosis, when it reaches a level where it is seriously dangerous to us. Now, this disease is chronic, and so it does not leave, and there is no cure. But in today's society, we have a therapy. And the therapy was invented about 100 years ago by Fredrik Debong and Charles Best, two Canadians. It consists of injecting insulin. And thanks to that, we can live. We simply have to shoot it with needles or insulin pumps, or, in that way, we can get that insulin which we lack, which we can no longer produce. It's great. But insulin is a very dangerous hormone. You see, If I miscalculate a bit and shoot a bit too much insulin, I could have a hypoglycemia. That is an episode of low blood sugar. And that can be a bit dangerous. I can fall unconscious and bad things can happen. I can also fall into a coma, I can have accidents in that state, and it's not really a very pleasant state to be in. So, due to this danger, we all have to become very data-driven. It goes a little something like this. First, I need to check my current blood glucose. That's like getting my current address. I do that by taking a little strip, putting it into my blood glucose testing device, piercing the skin of my finger, squeezing out a droplet of blood, and there. Yes, I just licked the blood off my finger. I'm a vampire. It's Halloween. 194. Well, that's about twice as high as it should be. Great. Never put the remote in the back pocket. Learned that? Good. Anyway, so now I have my current blood glucose. Then I need to estimate the food on my plate. Like, what's in front of me? How much carbs? How many carbs? And then I need to consider, what am I doing next? Am I going to go for a marathon, or am I going to stand on stage? You see, carbs, of course, increase the blood glucose, and sports actually decrease the blood glucose. If only it were that simple. You see, standing on stage, it's kind of stressing. I'm a bit nervous, so I have an increased cortisol level, stress hormone, and that increases blood glucose. Being in love, other hormones at play, decreases. Going skydiving, cortisol again, adrenaline, it all kind of messes our view of the world as type 1 diabetics, or our therapy, it messes it up. You see, we are not machines, we are human beings. But we live with this algorithm as the guiding principle of our lives. Back in 1984, as I was starting therapy, I needed to become my own pancreas using needles, blood, and brains. Since I have to do this every meal of the day and a couple of times in between just to check, for instance, when on stage, I've ended up taking about 60,000 shots in the last few years using needles. And since I can't do it blindly, I've had to do 75,000 blood glucose tests. It sums up. Now, today, we have the luxury of more or less real-time readings of, thanks to this sensor measuring the glucose level in my interstitial fluid, this fluid between my cells, and insulin pumps connected to us through little tubes which push insulin into our bodies. So we automate parts of it, and that's great. We know that this therapy works. We simply have to become the involuntary quantified selves of our society. We know that it works. For an average, we only live 8 years shorter lives than you guys. 100 years ago, I would have been dead at 5 years of age. Yet, yes, we know that we can live long and prosper, sure. But what drives us to test, to measure, to do this all this time, the rest of our lives, is not a lustful life, but rather the fear of a short, disgusting, and painful lives. That's how the old Greeks described life with diabetes back a couple of thousand years ago. You see, thanks to this driving force behind it, fear, every action, every therapy action becomes connected subconsciously to this fear, to recollection of the possibility of a short, painful, and disgusting life. So if you always have this drive based on negative energy, more or less, pushing you the rest of your life to check your blood glucose 7 times a day, and it kind of becomes a burden. And thus we say that we live with a monster on our side, the diabetes monster. To me, and to many of us, the therapy, after a while, becomes an enemy. In my case, this enemy took the form of a diabetes burnout. In my case, This diabetes burnout lasted for 3 years, where I didn't test. I hardly measured at all. I went to the doctor and lied. I didn't do well. I did abysmally, and I would not suggest it as a strategy for life. But I didn't care. You see, I stopped feeling that stuff. I got so used to it, it didn't mean anything to me anymore. Now, when you're in a hypoglycemic episode, when you have low blood sugar, we call it a hypo. When you're in a hypo, some stuff happens with the body, some stuff happens with the brain. I actually partook once in a clinical trial where they shoved me into an MRT and checked my brain out in a hypo. It was really uncomfortable. I had to lie there for 2 hours. But what they found out was kind of intriguing. You see, what happened to me is my brain, which only runs on glucose, did not have access to glucose, was that it, shut down. It shut down the frontal lobe, meaning I had no logic and no empathy. Excellent running through life like that, right? So that's me in a hypo. You don't want to mess with me, all right? Now, these episodes, we end up with a few stories of stuff that happens, and I'll go into the more nice ones today, like being arrested in the Sistine Chapel. The security guards thought I was on drugs. I was just in a hypo. Or a very strange episode in a French youth hostel, but that's actually, I don't want that on video. So let's skip to the next part, right? After a few years, I got out of it. And how I got out has affected my life in such a way that it spread to others. How I got out was by starting to treat my therapy like a game. It was not a conscious action that I started to apply a new methodology of diabetes treatment, no. But subconsciously, I started rewarding myself for doing what I should. If I tested once a day for 2 days, I got an extra beer in the evening. Remember, I live in Austria. And if I did that for a whole week, maybe my girlfriend would do the dishes on Sunday. Team play. Now, these rewards in time became intrinsic instead of extrinsic, meaning I didn't give myself stuff, and no one else did either, but rather I started feeling something connected to the therapy actions. And thus, I got back into the game. Now, this insight I gained after years of struggling did not come on itself. I didn't realize a few years down the line how this had come to pass. Rather, it was in a conversation with Frank, Gerald, and Michael, my co-founders at mySugr. We were discussing about how diabetes therapy should change, how it should be easier to work with the data, but actually we realized that we need to focus on the psychology, on the emotions, on the feelings, for that is where the secret lies. We wanted to make it easier for us to live with diabetes. And by making it also engaging and fun, we could flip the therapy. We could give it like positive short feedback loops so that you feel pride instead of, defeat. That you feel pride when you land a good value after a pizza. Pizzas are really vicious for us diabetics. If we can achieve that, awesome, right? Now, this thought has become the goal of our work in our little startup. Change the philosophy of diabetes therapy, or to put it crudely, make it suck less, by using games and modern technology, mobile phones and web browsers. Can it be that simple? Can it work? Well, we played with that thought for a while, and then we realized that actually what we're building are medical devices. Software as a medical device. And that's a regulated market. Meaning the FDA, the CE, the AGIS, the TGA, all these organizations with cool acronyms, they keep us safe so that no bad medical devices enter the market, and we, software engineers, designers, want to enter that? Good plan. So we held back for a while. But we found so many advocates and supporters and investors that we had to start. And thus, mySugr was born. Now, this group of 4 has grown to 20. Actually more, 22 now. Half of us with type 1 diabetes. And we gave shape to that diabetes monster we always said we lived with. It now lives on the mobile phones and web browsers. It helps people to keep themselves engaged in therapy. Our knowledge has come to life and into the pockets of 160,000 people around the world. We have CE and FDA approvals, we have TGA approvals and whatnot, yeah? We've struggled through that regulatory jungle, and we made it. Now, we have even reached a maturity where public insurance starts paying for our services. That's the holy grail. People can use it for free soon. Often, we reach that goal. Often, we are able to help someone take back control. In the last few years, we've received 14,000 emails from our customers. I've replied to 7,000 of them myself. And sometimes, it simply boggles my mind. When that monster first moved into the forearm of one of my customers, then we knew that our struggles were not for naught, but that we started to actually reach that level which we strived for, to make it suck less, to make someone proud of it. Something was working. I believe that our little group has been part of a great evolution of society. Look at us today. We are the digital natives. And what we've been part of is this group called digital natives attacking a new field, medicine, entering regulated markets and striving to change them. It's happening in banking, in space, and now also in healthcare. To the digital native, knowledge is a click away. We have Wikipedia and Google, as is the possibility to create. We can learn to program. Why the hell not build rockets and send 2 million people to Mars? It's the same way of thinking. We allow ourselves to look into this. And we have the possibility to spread the ideas we reach. These changes are already happening. The grassroots are now starting to move the earth. And us, the normal people, are stepping up to the plate and taking control. Life on this planet will be exactly as horrible as you allow it to be. The flip side of that is that life will also be as fantastic as you make it. Life, like I said, is amazing. And it is ours to shape. Thank you.